Okay, let's look at the structure of our striated muscle fibers. These muscle types are mainly used for skeletal movement, so you'll find them located on the skeletal system. The skeletal muscle tissue is very striated. It has dark and light bands, so you can see within this diagram, kind of right in this general region and all along these bands, you see the light and the dark striations or the stripes. And that is what really helps to identify the tissues that are skeletal. And so these are going to be composed of bundles of muscle fibers, and they're usually longer than your typical cells, and they will contract in a longitudinal way, and they have many nuclei contained within these types of cells and many mitochondria. So you could probably, hopefully, deduce the reason to why there's lots of mitochondria in the skeletal muscle tissues, which is kind of alluding to this portion right here. Okay, so you've got a question within your muscle packet, so make sure that you can kind of deduce the reason for that. So each muscle has many muscle fibers with elongated structures called myofibrils, and we're going to look at what that is. But as you zoom in from the bigger muscle structure all the way down to its components, we begin to see how the muscle actually works. And so utilizing this diagram that you have, let's go ahead and kind of work through and label what this structure looks like. So you have muscle cells that are going to be bundled together, and they're held in place by the sarcolemma, which is letter A. And this is pretty much sort of like the cytoplasm of the muscle fiber. That's kind of analogous to that. And the sarcoplasm will contain structures called glycosomes that store glycogen so that we can utilize the sugar in order to end up producing our energy that we're needing. And looking on to structure D, you can see the sarcoplasmic reticulum. It's a fluid-filled membrane sac around the myofibrils, which is basically like the smooth ER of this structure. And the myofibrils, if you can see here, located here and here, so this tube-like structure, it's like a rod or a tube, and it runs the length of the cell. And closely packed, like we said before, are going to be the mitochondria between. And the myofibril is the contractile element of the muscle. So when our muscle contracts, this is the part that is doing the contraction. And this structure itself, the myofibril, is where we see the striated band pattern. So over here, you can see within the myofibril, you see these striations, this dark pattern and this light pattern that kind of keeps happening over and over. A few other things that we can label is that we have a capillary network that's within the muscle fiber. You can see that letter C is the nucleus, and we've already kind of alluded to that. It's kind of all over the muscle fiber. The striations that we talked about are letter G. And then when we look at those bands, we can label the light and dark bands. And so you have I as the light bands and J are the dark bands. Then lastly, let's talk about the myofibril of the muscle fiber. What we have within the myofibril are called sarcomeres. The sarcomeres are basically making up the entire myofibril. So if this structure right here is the myofibril, right, all the way down the length, within the structure are these, let's see, this structure right here is going to be the sarcomere. Okay, it's a repeating unit of the striated muscle cell, and it's a unit that makes that myofibril contract, that allows for the movement. And we'll study specifically how that works, and then we'll study even more specifically what makes up the sarcomere structure itself.